Good afternoon. This is Glenn Barnes at the Environmental Finance Center at the University of North Carolina. I'd like to welcome you to our webinar today on the Hawaii Rates Dashboard. So we thank you all for joining us this afternoon. As we get started here today, what we're going to do is have three of us talk to you about the rate survey that we did and the dashboard that we've created, and then we will demo that tool for you, and we will have time to take your questions at the end of the hour. So again, my name is Glenn Barnes. I'm Associate Director of the Environmental Finance Center.
I'm Annalee Harkins. I'm a Day Specialist and Project Manager here.
And I'm Kirk. I'm a Research Assistant and Graduate Student at UNC.
Great, and we're glad to have so many of you joining us this afternoon as well. Just a little bit of explanation of how to use the webinar software. So you should have a control panel on the top right section of your screen that you can open or close by clicking on the orange arrow. All phones or microphones will be muted during the webinar, and you can use the key there as indicated on the screen to toggle between full screen or just a window view. You've got the choice to either call in on the phone or use your computer for the audio. And then please, there's a questions box at the bottom. And if you have any questions throughout the webinar, please make sure that you submit those and we will get to them at the end of the hour or as they come in. So we appreciate those questions at any time. Just by a quick introduction, would like to explain who we are here at the Environmental Finance Center. So we are a university-based center, and the work that we do is really mostly with environmental service providers. So we look at how to help organizations, whether they be units of government or private businesses or nonprofits that provide environmental services. We help them think about how to offer those services in ways that are fair and effective and financially sustainable. And we do that through a number of different ways. One is through applied research, which is how we came about doing this research project and dashboard. We also do some teaching, like today's webinar and workshops and other conference presentations. We also do some one-on-one assistance we'll talk about a little bit. And then we also help systems think about how to design and evaluate their programs. So these are all services that we provide here from North Carolina, but for all of the country. Now, this particular project was funded by the State of Hawaii, Department of Health, State Drinking Water Branch, and we're very grateful to our partners there. We've got Alan Dillon on the line with us today and probably some of his colleagues as well. So they have been terrific partners in helping to fund this effort for the survey and the dashboard, and also helping us collect data appropriately and make sure that we have everything that we need to be able to provide a really good tool for systems in the state. And I did want to mention another project that we have that may be of interest for those of you on the line who come from water systems that serve 10,000 or fewer people. We have funding from the US EPA to work with these small water systems on finance and management topics. That includes activities in every state in the country, including Hawaii. And all small water systems are eligible to receive free training and technical assistance through us. And we have individual one-on-one assistance, we have workshops, we have some small group support, webinars, we do e-learning modules and other kinds of online tools, and then we also have a blog as well. So we'll have some more information about this project and how you can take advantage of it at the end of the hour today. And finally, I just wanted to highlight a little bit of our past work in the state of Hawaii. So we have held a number of water finance workshops through the years on Oahu, on Maui, and on the Big Island. We have also provided direct technical assistance to small water systems throughout the state. We have done some work directly with the Hawaii Public Utilities Commission, so we know that some of you listening in today may be privately owned systems that fall under the regulation of the Utilities Commission. We have done some training with them on finance and management topics for small water systems. And then stepping out of the water universe for a minute, a few years back, my colleague Jeff and I helped develop the Green Sun Hawaii program, which is a state-run lending program for solar and renewable energy for businesses and homes. So we have been fortunate to do quite a bit of work throughout the state of Hawaii through the years, and this survey and dashboard was an exciting addition to that suite of services that we have provided. So our objective for the webinar today mostly is that you become familiar with the features and benefits of our Hawaii water rates dashboard. You'll be able to look to see how to compare one system's rates with those of another system, and then also learn how to apply several useful financial benchmarks to your water system. So that is our objectives for the hour today. At this time, I want to pass the microphone over to my colleague, Evan Kirk, who is going to describe the survey process, and then from there, we will begin to demonstrate the tool.
Great. Thanks, Glenn. So we conducted the survey over a few months in 2016 and 2017 by collecting rates and rate sheets from water systems in Hawaii for residential and commercial water classes. And these rates included base charges and volumetric rates. And we used the data that we collected to calculate various consumption points for both residential and commercial water. Supplemental data that we collected audited financial statements. We got these from the PUC and from systems directly. We also got the rate sheets from the PUC as well for some utilities that might be here saying, hey, I didn't send in my rate sheet, but the PUC provided that for us. We also used the CIDWIS database through US EPA for things like population and drinking water source. And then we used economic and population data from the 2015 American Community Survey through the U.S. Census. So we had a total of 35 systems participate, and among these 35 systems, there were 39 rate structures, and they serviced about 1.33 million people, which is 85% of the people serviced by public drinking water systems, community water systems in the state. And these 35 systems, 17 were for-profits, 12 were not-for-profits, 4 were county utilities, and 2 were state government entities. Another thing we collected was the automatic power cost adjustment. This is important specifically in Hawaii because it's pretty unique to the state. Electricity prices are relatively high, and they can be quite volatile given the fact that some of the utilities may even use fuel, liquid fuel, as a source of electricity. And so 12 of the 39 rate structures had APCAs, and we were able to collect 11 of these 12, and these were included in the rates on the dashboard effective as of September 2016. So I'd like to pass it now to my colleague Annalee Harkins, and she'll take it over from here.
All right, thanks, Evan. Here we go, user control. Okay. So this is just a basic screenshot of our Hawaii rates dashboard, which you may or may not have seen before. So I'm going to go through each of the features of this page, but this is just to give you that first general overview. We have the map on the left side of the different islands, and each of those little blue dots and that one big red dot, those are all utilities. And then on the right side, we have these 4 dials, which we're really going to focus on and explain what these different colored bands mean and how they can be helpful for comparing yourself to other utilities within your peer groups. So first I'm going to talk about these top 2 dials, the bill comparison dial and the conservation signal dial. And both of those, as noted, are for comparing yourself to your peer group. And you can also see this red circle on the left side of the screen above the map of the island. That's where you can select your peer group. So we have a lot of different peer groups. It's not just, you know, what's a utility that's in your area or that is governed by the same council of government. It's really a lot of different factors that you can choose from to find the ones that are most relevant to you. So that could be your utility size, how many people you serve, the customer income level of the people you serve, the different water source types that you may have, depending on your your revenues that you generate, let me go back, your location, the type of rate structure you have. We just break it up into a lot of different ways so that you can, again, find the other utilities that are in the same boat as you and compare yourself effectively. Okay, so talking about this first dial, which is in the upper left of the dashboard, this is the bill comparison dial. And this is kind of the go-to one that people look for in comparing their rates. So you'll see on the dashboard when we go through the full demonstration in a little bit, there's a slider above the map that lets you select your consumption amount. So right now it's set at 5,000 gallons. So we see here it says water bill at 5,000 gallons. And for this utility, the bill price is located right there in the middle at $73.83. But what we're really focusing on is what the colored segments of the dial mean. So this widest green patch in the middle of the dial, that is the middle 50% of the utilities. Their bills fall within that range. So you can think of that if you're in the middle, you're right with the pack, you're probably doing okay. You're not too high or too low for what's within your peer group. The next part we'll talk about are these lighter green bands that are to the left and the right of this wide middle green band. And these are the 15% below and above that big middle 50%. So this means that 15% of the utilities in your peer group, they have bills that are lower than that or higher than that. So they're a little bit, they're not quite in with the rest of the pack, but they are either slightly lower or higher. If you combine all those green bands, the 15% and the 50%, you get 80% of all the utilities in your peer group. So this is really, the majority of everyone that you're comparing your bills to. And then we also have these little yellow segments at the very bottom of the dial. And this is the lowest and highest 10% of utilities. So these utilities are either charging very little compared to the other utilities in their peer group, or quite a bit more. They're charging more than 90% of other utilities. Okay, the next dial, which is still in this compare to your peer group section, is the conservation signal dial. And this dial, unlike the other dial that we just went through, these colored bands don't quite mean as much of good or less good. They more just mean they're just designations for different quartiles. So we have each section there equals 25%. And the conservation signal is what we call the marginal price of 1,000 gallons of water after 10,000 gallons of water of consumption. So basically it's beyond the point of non-discretionary use, and so you're probably using water for things like watering your lawn, or maybe you're starting a water park in your backyard. So you don't necessarily need to use all that water. And if a utility is trying to send a message to its customers to conserve water, they might want to have that marginal price be higher after that point. So that's what that's showing there. On this example here, we have someone that's showing, again, within their peer group, a moderately high, a moderately strong conservation signal. If it was in this kind of yellowish color all the way on the left, that would be very low. And that would say, you can basically just keep using water at the same rate. We're not trying to promote conservation through our rate structure here. Okay, now moving on to the bottom two dials. These dials compare your utility and rate structure to established benchmarks. So these are not comparing you to your peers. These are benchmarks that we at the EFC have set in the dashboard. So, you may have different opinions on what your benchmark should be. I'll just throw that out there. But the first one we're going to talk about is the cost recovery dial. And you can see we have this very clear, red, yellow, green color scheme, like traffic lights, to Glenn's laughing because he's colorblind and he can't actually tell. And also so is Evan. I'm the only person that can see this accurately. I hope you can too. But we have this red, yellow, green color scheme, much like traffic lights, to give you that instant signal of, red is not so great, green is good, and yellow means, oh, I'm not so, sure, somewhere in the middle. So here, this red that we have, with this bracket here pointing out on the dial, this means that your operating costs exceed your operating revenues. And this, I want to point out, includes depreciation. We include depreciation in our calculations because we want utilities to be able to, plan for future expenses, and they may look like they're doing better than they kind of actually are if we don't include depreciation in that calculation. So red means, you're basically not making ends meet enough. Yeah, and the way we calculate that is just by dividing the revenues and the costs. Okay, the next one, yellow, means you are meeting those costs, but maybe not enough to be planning for long-term projects, such as capital improvement plans or saving up for a big project, whatever your needs might be. So that falls within 1 to 1.2. It's kind of a narrow slice there on the dial. This green section, which is the largest section of the dial, is a good place to be. It means you probably have enough to not only pay for your day-to-day costs, but also save for your long-term goals and any infrastructure upgrades that you may need to do for future projects or expansion. However, there's also this tiny little yellow section at the end, which suggests that there can be too much of a good thing. It's kind of a concern if, maybe your depreciation isn't actually factoring in the way it should be. Perhaps you're an old system, and basically your depreciation costs are next to nothing because the value of your equipment is all, kind of run down, in which case it may look like you have a lot higher revenues in terms of, or in relation to your costs. That also gets into the next section, which we're going to cover affordability. Okay, the next dial on the lower right of the dashboard is affordability. We use this metric is based on the annual income of a customer in your community. It's the amount that they spend on their water bills. So we have decided what this benchmark is, where these markers fall. There is no universal standard, but this is something that we think is a good starting place to approach affordability, though communities might want to examine more detailed breakdown from the Census Bureau about their community's needs. So here in the lower left of the dial, we have this green segment, which goes up to 1%. So anything in that green segment means, yes, your rates are pretty affordable, but again, that is based on the median household income. So, obviously that's only 50% of your community's income. There may be many more people below or above that amount. Oops, wrong direction. This yellow segment here is again between about 1 and 1.5, and that means that 1 and 1.5% of your annual income is spent on water bills based on your community's median household income. And then, oops, wrong one again. This larger red segment is if you're spending over 1.5% of your annual income, and this can, it goes from 1.5 all the way up to 6%, which could be quite unaffordable for many people. Okay. We're going to go to the dashboard now for a real-life demonstration. Is it up in here? Oh.
And while Annalee is pulling that up, we had a question come in about how many public water systems are represented in the dashboard, and that is 35. And again, representing about 90% of the population of the state.
All right, we've got the dashboard pulled up here. And you'll see this first pop-up box that gives you some brief instructions on how to use the tool. First, you can select your utility from this drop-down list of everyone in the survey. And we also have some examples at the very top, just for demonstration purposes, an example of an affordability issue, if you have low rates and low operating revenue, and just kind of a standard case that falls somewhere in the middle. So let's pick a system here. We'll go with Maui. They're one of the larger county systems. And we have added a comparison group since our last webinar based on a comment from one of the attendees, which we thought was a great idea, of being able to compare the county systems versus all the others combined. So if you choose a system that is not a county system, here you have everyone else depending, regardless of whether they're for-profit or their municipality, they're all in that comparison group. But if you're a county, then you're just being compared to the other county. So here we have the bill comparison dial. We're seeing here this is falling in the lower end of the bills for that comparison group. But affordability, on the other hand, is looking really great. A pretty average conservation signal. Looks like maybe cost recovery could be better here. But we're not here to analyze this water system particularly, just here to show you the features. So I want to show you this feature at the bottom here, effective raising rates by. This is a way that you can kind of get a general idea of what it would look like if you were to raise your rates. Let's say by about 20%. We have this warning that shows up, but it does show the dials move based on what you've input. So you see this kind of shadow of where you used to be and where you are now. So if you were to raise rates even higher, you might see, okay, that cost recovery is improving and affordability is still in this green range, so maybe a rate increase could be possible there. Let me go back to 0 here. Another thing that I'd like to show you, let me pick a, oh no. Here we go. If not all utilities provided their financial data, so if you see this red box come up where it says data not available, that doesn't mean that you still can't use the tool for your own financial purposes. So if you see this, you can go ahead and click Edit Data or Add Utility, and you will be able to clone this utility and just input your finances right there. This will just be for your on your computer. It won't be saved to the database. We won't be able to collect that data, but you will be able to take a screenshot of it or however you want to use it. And this is also another way that you can kind of visualize changing rates, adjusting median household income. These are all ways that you can still see these changes on the dashboard. There we go. The characteristics tab, the next tab over from all these dials, has a lot of statistics and more of that socioeconomic data that we collected from the census and also from the EPA. And again, this is allowing you to compare between yourself and your peers. So, estimated number of connections. This is a very small system with only 35, and the median for all the utilities in this group is 156. If we were to go to a county system, what's really interesting is that the numbers are quite different. Here we have almost 36,000 people, but for all utilities, the median is still only 156. most systems in the survey are quite small. So, we have the statistics that we've laid out here and also the statewide averages for comparison. And on this last tab for links, we have some information about the survey, drinking water branch links, and other resources for Hawaii, as well as some of our additional tools. And these are all free tools that go more in depth on a lot of these topics, such as affordability, capital improvement plans, deciding whether or not to raise your rates. You can click on any of these links and it will take you to those tools so you can use them. I also want to mention that these blue little circles with the question marks have more information in case you forget what they mean or you're not sure, you need some reference. This goes into explanation about what these different color bars mean and how we've computed this data, and sometimes there's also links to other tools there as well. So, do we have any questions so far about the dashboard?
Yeah, so we had a question that came in, which you answered one way of dealing with this, but will the dashboard be updated if, for example, rates change?
Yeah, so one way that you can just get an instant look at that yourself is just by using, again, that edit data or add utility function. If you have never been in the survey, you can go ahead and create a new utility and input all of that data yourself. Or if you want to, just modify the data for yourself, you are already in the survey, you can use these functions. But in general, if you say, oh, my rates have changed, you can email me and we can update this data. And I can be reached either on this link here on the Links tab, email feedback or comments, or if you scroll down to the bottom of the dashboard, we have this link here, email feedback or comments, and that will also get to me.
Okay, great. Another question has come in regarding the conservation signal and conservation pricing. So the question is that the listener has read that there have been some challenges to conservation pricing in that higher rates do not reflect the higher cost of service. Is this an issue for Hawaii? And I think around the country, so basically the idea is that the rate that you charge is meant to reflect the full cost of the service that you're providing. And so certainly there are types of rate structures, like, for example, an increasing block rate structure where the higher the bill or the higher the usage amount goes, the more per gallon a water customer is charged. And generally around the country, those rate structures have been okay, assuming that the rates being charged are reasonable. So for example, if the first 4,000 gallons of usage are being billed at $3 per 1,000 gallons, and the next 8,000 gallons of usage are being billed at $65 per 1,000 gallons, most likely that's going to face a challenge. But for the purposes of promoting conservation, generally speaking, we think that it's okay if there's not a huge differential, but a somewhat noticeable differential between the rates. But obviously, you've got to be able to show that there's some kind of rational connection between what you're charging and what you the service that's being rendered. Now, if you are a countywide system or a nonprofit system, your rates are being approved by your board, and there's a process for that. But obviously, if you are listening today and you are a privately owned system, as you know, you have to go through the process with the State Utility Commission and the Office of Consumer Advocate in Hawaii, and they're going to take a real hard look at that kind of rate structure, mostly because of affordability concerns and fairness concerns, and so that's really an individual conversation you would want to have with those regulatory agencies. Okay, so we have another question that's come in that says, can I take the data from the website and export it to an Excel spreadsheet for manipulation?
Well, we do have the Excel spreadsheet ready for download. It describes the rate structures, and it also shows the bill amounts at certain consumption points in Hawaii. But the answer is yes. You can also email me if you want a spreadsheet of just kind of the raw data. We can provide that for you, but the tables are a great resource where it's already kind of cleaned up and presented in an easy format for you.
Okay, so I've started to address this a little bit, but we get a lot of questions about when is it appropriate to use this tool? How can this tool be used? And so there's a couple of ideas that we have up on the screen, and I'll share a couple of stories that we've heard from systems that we've worked with. And the first part is that this can be a part of your annual rate review. So we hope that all of you take the time on an annual basis to look at your costs and revenues from the past year, to estimate any changes or increases in costs that might be coming, to possibly look at changes in your revenue as well. I think generally speaking, around the country, we have seen that the average per capita water use over time is going down. That's largely due to improved toilets and shower heads and washing machines and other technology, just also maybe changes in people's behavior. So, on an annual basis, you should really look at how you did in terms of cost and revenue, or maybe even more frequently than an annual basis. And if the numbers are not coming out, if that operating ratio is not coming out to be a really good number, you may want to consider raising your rates and going through whatever process that is, again, for the county systems and nonprofits to go through your boards, and for private systems to make a rate case to the Utilities Commission. So that is the first part. You can use this dashboard as a way of getting a quick snapshot of where things are with your water system, and then use that as a tool amongst others to help you think about whether or not you need to change your rates in the coming year. So that's the first idea. And we hear often from water systems, this is the first year we've done the dashboard in Hawaii, but we have done these tools in about a dozen other states, and the oldest one in North Carolina is about 10 years old now. So we've been had a lot of experience in other parts of the country of using these tools. And so I think for systems in Hawaii, what we've seen in other states is that, a system will use this as part of that annual rate review that they do. A second way that this tool may be helpful is you at a staff level may see very clearly that rate changes are necessary, but you have some folks to convince. And again, primarily here talking about the governmental and nonprofit systems where you have a board of directors that will have to approve the rate changes. We sometimes hear from systems that they like to use this tool as a visual to help explain whether or not a rate increase might be warranted. And a common story that we hear from some systems, I'm in particular thinking of a system in Alabama we did some work with a few years ago, that the town manager went to the board and said, we need a rate increase, our revenues are not covering the full cost of service, we need future capital improvements. And the board's first reaction was, I don't know, I kind of feel like our rates are pretty high as it is. Do you have any sense of whether or not that's true? Well, he was able to pull up our dashboard and show on that rates comparison dial that, in fact, their rates were not very high compared to all utilities and to peer utilities. And at the same time, the affordability measure was fairly low, the percentage. And that gave the board a lot more comfort in approving the rate increase because they felt like their rates were not out of line with other systems. So, one of the biggest challenges we ran into in doing this survey and dashboard in Hawaii is that you have the countywide systems that are gigantic, and then you have a lot of much smaller systems. And even if you looked at, when Annalee had the dashboard up earlier of the comparison group, Maui had something like 35,000 connections, and in their peer group, the median was something like 300. So, many, many small systems and then just a handful of very large systems is kind of what Hawaii has. So, again, those different comparison groups, like similar number of accounts, would be a really helpful one of kind of narrowing in on your peer group. A third way that this tool could be helpful to you is explaining your rates to your customers. So we hope that you have rates that are easily understood by your customers, and that perhaps you're using the rates to send certain signals to them about conserving or about affordability or full cost pricing, whatever the case may be. This dashboard is a publicly available tool. It will be on our website, and there's no login or password required for it. So if you have a customer who says, I don't know, I feel like we're really charging a lot more than everybody else. In fact, this is a tool you might send them to say, well, you can get a actual, indication of where we sit compared to peer systems around the state. And then finally, for private systems that have to go before the Utilities Commission and the Office of Consumer Advocate, again, this tool may be useful in those discussions with them to show, again, there's an ownership type in there. So if you're a privately owned system, you would be able to show, compared to other privately owned systems that are also under Utility Commission purview, of how you compare and some other notes in there. So obviously, the Utilities Commission, the Office of Consumer Advocate, has a very specific process that they go through when they are approving rates. And they're going to look at your test year. They're going to dig through your data. They're going to ask you to spread out the cost of capital improvements or repairs over time, look at approving debt. I don't think this tool is going to significantly change that process in any way, but it is a resource that is available to you as part of those discussions. And in fact, in some other states, we see that this tool becomes a part of the Utility Commission process. In particular, Wisconsin, which is an interesting state where all utilities, regardless of ownership type, fall under the purview of the Utilities Commission. So that includes both the privately owned systems, but then also the publicly owned systems, the local governments as well. And I'll say finally, don't have this on the slide, but in several states, the dashboard has become an integral part of systems going to seek funding from state and federal programs like the State Revolving Fund or USDA Rural Development. And again, to pull back an example from Alabama, we met with a system from the wonderfully named town of Wetumpka, who had recently applied for an SRF loan, and the state had actually provided a copy of their, or screenshot of their dashboard as part of the response on that, and wanted to see kind of using that dashboard, the state was using it as a way of determining the appropriateness of the rates for that particular system. So these are just some of the ways that we see that these tools can be used. And again, because this is a brand new tool in Hawaii, we're hoping that it will be of use to you. And I'll reiterate, as we've said before, again, because it's a new tool, we will record and post this webinar if you have questions to go back to. And as Annalee noted, there are those help boxes. But if you have any questions, just please reach out to us at any time, and we're happy to walk you through it. We can get on the computer with you and kind of talk through some of the issues that you might be having with the tool, because we want to make sure that you're getting the fullest use out of the tool and the other resources that are available.
Also, we are doing this webinar again on Thursday at the same time. So if you found this at all useful, or you think it would be interesting to your colleagues or someone that you know at another water system, please pass it on to them. They still have time to sign up, and we hope to see them on Thursday.
Great. We had a question come in that says, is there a way to compare all water systems excluding the 4 county systems? So is there a way to compare the other 31 with just dropping the county systems out?
That's a good question.
And I think there's probably ways you can do it based on the system size, but I'm not sure that we're going to collect all 31 in there, but that may be an improvement that we can put into the tool as a comparison group. Because again, as we said, those 4 systems are a little bit different from everybody else. So certainly those 4 systems can compare against each other, but we'll see if we can find a way to make it that you can compare the others just exclusively. So we have a question, Evan, maybe this will be for you. How many systems had agricultural rates that we saw on the rate sheets?
There were 2 irrigation rates that were commercial irrigation, and we don't do any sort of analysis with those. The irrigation that we do analysis with is just the residential irrigation. And certainly if a utility is just commercial irrigation, we don't analyze those rates as well. So there are a couple of utilities that sell water to commercial irrigation customers as well as residential customers. And those are included in the survey, but we don't do any sort of analysis with commercial irrigation.
Okay, and I'll also just add to that as well. I mean, I think occasionally I've worked with some systems on Maui, for example, where it's mostly residential, but then some of those residents might have flower farms or something like that. So you've got a few kind of, I don't know if I'd say agricultural, but light agricultural users. And it is an interesting question about whether or not there should be a differential rate for those uses. Certainly if you have sewer tied to the water rates, this is just a water dashboard, but we do some work with sewer as well, and sometimes the sewer usage is based on the water usage. So that's kind of an interesting way of looking at it. And again, that's something we'll be happy to get into with you a little bit on a one-on-one basis if you are interested. So we also had a question come up about electricity surcharges, which are unique to Hawaii, or maybe not unique, but not typical on the mainland, but probably more typical in Hawaii, and then also our island territory areas, and probably some systems in Alaska as well. So can we talk a little bit about electricity surcharges?
Yeah, I found that pretty exciting when I was doing the report and the survey. They are an automatic power cost adjustment, and this was, to me, unique. This was the first time I had seen it. And the way that works is the utility would get an approval from the PUC or their board to put in a mechanism by way of changing the rates every time the electricity changes on a monthly or bi-monthly or quarterly basis, whatever the billing period is for the utility. So if electricity goes up or down based off of a baseline electricity price the utility sets at the approval process, then the bill is adjusted for the customer based off the electricity cost up or down. So there are a couple of utilities whose electricity is a little cheaper now than it was when they set the baseline, so they actually knock price off the bill each month currently. There are other utilities whose baseline electricity cost was set years ago, so electricity is now a lot more expensive than it was then. And I actually wrote a blog about this, which you can find on our website if you search APCA under the blog. And it's a good mechanism for utilities that are regulated by the PUC, specifically because the PUC is able to approve this, and so your revenue adjusts according to your electricity costs. So if electricity costs spike, you're not stuck eating a loss for a while until you're able to get a new rate case in front of the PUC. And then there are other charges that might vary based off of variables such as drought surcharges, which we see in other states as well. So the APCA was a very innovative thing that I saw, and I found it quite interesting enough to write a blog about. So check that out if you're more interested.
And I'll say that if your rates are changing due to a power cost adjustment, again, you can go in on the dashboard and edit your data and essentially just adjust your base bill as a way of kind of adjusting the power cost adjustment. Or if your power cost adjustment is a multiplier on the variable charge, that's the other way to do it. So there are ways to kind of go in if your power bill has changed some. Now, of course, if it's changed for other utilities, we're not going to know that until the next time we do a rate survey. So that would be one drawback, but you would at least be able to put your own rates in at a more accurate number.
And I just wanted to add, the utilities that have an APCA that participated in our survey, there were, I believe, 9, and we have the APCA information for 8 of those, and that number is effective as of September 2016. So that the bill that you see on the dashboard includes the APCA. So utilities that are able to get revenue from the APCA, that's reflected in the dashboard.
And we also have a section further detailing the APCA in the report as well.
Okay. We also had a question come in which I thought was interesting, which is, were individual utilities concerned with making this information available online? And I think that is a great question, and I do think that this is not meant, the dashboard is not meant to judge in any way. You know, I've worked with systems in Hawaii that due to financial constraints are not able to get in front of the Utilities Commission on a regular basis, or in some cases they are taking over from somebody who perhaps hasn't been in for a rate case for, in some cases, 20 or 30 years. And obviously, on this tool, their cost recovery and other mechanisms are not going to look very good, because what we're not capturing here is that, you know, if you're a privately owned system and you have some type of, like, you know, homeowner fee or community fee that's supplementing the water rates, that's not getting swept up here. We're just really looking purely at the cost of water. But generally speaking, you know, this is not meant to put any utilities on the spot or anything like that. It's really meant to be a tool to be helpful and to share this information. And generally speaking, the information is either through, you know, governmental systems or nonprofit systems, or through the Utilities Commission, is publicly available anyway. So, take that in mind as we put the tool out here, that if you pull up your system and you look really great, and that's an affirmation that you're going in the right direction, that's good. And if your system maybe doesn't look quite as good on the tool, what that's meant to do is to be able to help you start a conversation with decision makers or the Utilities Commission or whomever needs to be involved about whether or not there can be some improvements made to the finance and management. So I'd like to go ahead and close with just a couple of the resources that we have available. So as you saw, as Annalee was pulling up the dashboard, and we intentionally didn't have the project page up, so we wanted you to see that you can go to our website, just click search this site, type in Hawaii, and you will get there pretty easily. But we have a web page also linked directly here from the slide that shows all of the resources that we have available for the state of Hawaii and the survey that we did. Included in that is a comprehensive water rates report for the state. So this is going to look at residential water, residential irrigation rates, commercial and non-residential water, as well as some of the power cost adjustment discussion we had and other things. So if you're really interested in kind of going through this, this survey in more detail, there are tables of the rate structures and the computed bills, as well as some summary information. So we encourage you to check that out. That is available on the page. Evan mentioned earlier that we have an environmental finance blog, and it's a great way to keep up to date on kind of the latest information on water finance and management topics. So from our website or from this direct link here, you can sign up for that. Posts come out about once a week. They're about 750 to 1,000 words. And most are on water finance, although we do write some on energy and stormwater and other environmental topics occasionally, and they may be of interest to you as well, but you can subscribe specifically for water. I mentioned earlier the small water systems project that we have that has a separate website because it's a partnership between us and our sister environmental finance center, so it's efcnetwork.org. And from there, you can see some upcoming workshops, webinars, and also past workshops and webinars with recordings and slide decks. So that's from the Workshops and Webinars tab. If you're interested in in-depth technical assistance and you are a system serving 10,000 or fewer people, you can click on that assistance link, fill out a form, and that will come to us, and we'll put you up with the right people for that assistance. And finally, we have a resources tab that is a collection of tools and guides, spreadsheets, other dashboards that you can take a look at. And we've mentioned some of them on the webinar today, and some of them are linked directly from the dashboard, but this is just another place to find them. And if you're going to be out at the HWWA and HRWA conference next month, on the Big Island, I will be there doing 2 presentations. So one will be, I believe on Wednesday morning, will be a repeat of this rates dashboard presentation. So if there's other people from your water system who you think this would be valuable for and they can't make the webinar on Thursday, they can come visit at the conference. And then I'll also be doing on Thursday morning a presentation about the affordability of water service and some really exciting new resources we have along that question. So hope to see you all out at the conference. And while I am in the state for that week, so it's the week of Halloween, I am planning to go visit some systems in person to do some one-on-one assistance. There are a couple of systems we've worked with in past years that I'm interested to meet with, but if we've not met you before and after looking at the dashboard you'd like to chat with us more, I'd be delighted to see if I can come by and visit with you in person. If you're at the conference, we can just find some time during the conference, and if not, I'll be happy to come to you and get to see your system and understand a little bit about the operations as well. Okay, if we do not have any other questions, we'll give you a minute to put those in, but we'll be happy to wrap up a couple minutes early. But I'd just like to again say thank you to especially to the Safe Drinking Water Branch for their funding for this survey and dashboard and their great assistance in this process, as well as friends at the Utility Commission who helped us out, We had a good bit of help from some colleagues in the technical assistance community, so people working with Rural Water Association and RCAP were helpful in the survey. And of course, a great thanks to all of the systems who responded to the survey.
Indeed.
Okay, I think that is all the questions that we have for today. So again, we'll be back on Thursday, same time, to repeat this webinar. If others in your water system did not get a chance to listen today and might want to listen live. But we will also have this webinar recorded as well as the one on Thursday, and we'll post the recordings on the project website, and we'll email all of you a link to those as well as a copy of the slide deck for today. And we're very grateful for all of you taking some time out of your afternoon for us. So take care, and we hope to see you either at the conference or hear from you if you have any questions on the dashboard. Thank you very much, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you.